today's fresh word is science. I know we don't usually talk about science in church, but today we're exploring science and our faith. So I was wondering, do you like science?
Yeah. I like science!
Yes, and I want to be a scientist when I grow up.
I do like science. I love how you learn cool things.
Science is so important. It's the reason we can be who we are today and have the things that we have. If we didn't have science, we couldn't go to the doctor when we're sick and get prescriptions in order to help our bodies become better. If we didn't have science, we couldn't even use our cell phones. Do you know that science puts satellites out into the atmosphere and then they ping across the whole world in order to get our phones to work? Science is what allows us to do so many things in our world today. Science can even look backwards on how we came to be. So today we're talking about evolution. And I was wondering if you know what that big word is.
What's evolution?
It's a new generation or something. Like all your parents, or maybe all your parents and grown-ups are from another whatever you said.
The change between something and then growing into something like a veil turning into something else.
Can you think of ways that human beings evolve as a species?
Well, at first we were apes and then we became humans.
I just love it. Let's evolve.
So I was spending some time this morning reading our Bible and looking at the book of Genesis. And in the book of Genesis, we get two stories about our creation. Now, one story tells us about Adam and Eve. Do you know that story? It's the story about the first human beings. And as the story goes, it says that God created human beings, this one first human, out of the ground, out of the earth, and then blew the spirit, God's breath into this human being, and they came alive. And then God tries to find the perfect partner. So God creates all these different animals, but none of them are quite right. Eventually, God creates Eve, and they become the parents of humanity. Now, it's a great story, and it talks about how we're all connected. We're all part of God's family. We're all related. And there's something to that, but the story itself isn't exactly factually true. That's because it's missing some important characters. Do you know these guys? They're not in our Bible. That's because when they wrote the story of Genesis, they didn't know about dinosaurs. Later on, we discovered dinosaur bones and realized that dinosaurs are much older than human beings. So our story isn't exactly factual, and it isn't exactly science. There's another story in Genesis that I just love about the creation of the world and God creating the world in 7 days. And it begins with the story of the waters and the wind upon the waters and the animals that emerge from it. There is some scientific evidence for that. Check this out from Minute Earth.
You've probably heard that every bony land-dwelling creature on Earth evolved from fish that grew limbs and crawled out of the water many million years ago. And yet, over 99% of the fish in today's oceans, lakes, and rivers have incredibly delicate fins, formed by a series of spines covered by a thin web of skin. It's hard to imagine fins like those evolving into sturdy, weight-bearing limbs, because they didn't. But the fins of a far more foreign fish did. Very soon after bony fishes first evolved, they branched into two groups, those with flimsy ray-type fins and those with more meaty appendages that were attached to their bodies by a single strong bone. At first, those so-called lobe-finned fishes far outnumbered their ray-finned relatives. But just as some of them were becoming adapted for life in the weedy shallows, global climate fluctuations caused a mass extinction that devastated life in the oceans. After the catastrophe, the ray-finned fishes recovered and took over the seas. The lobe-fins never recovered, but a few survivors in the shallows managed to find their footing out of the water and eventually gave rise to every backboned, four-limbed creature to ever crawl, hop, fly, or walk on land.
So as you can see, human beings evolved. We all came from these fish, I suppose. We're part of evolution and we continue to evolve. Do you think God is part of evolution?
Yes, I don't know.
Well, we are called to listen to the stories of our faith, to learn from them, to find inspiration, but we're also called to ingenuity, to continue to learn more and more about science so we can figure out more and more about our world and hopefully what we're supposed to do in our place in it. When we learn about science, we can think about how we work together and how we can work together for the betterment of the world or God's creation. So keep studying your science and keep it fresh.
Let's go to Science Lab, aka Sunday School.